Welcome to another video. Today we're going to show you another piece of interesting history.
To get away from downtown Denison, get away from the riffraff and that city.
Yeah.
The problem was, right after this neighborhood was built in 1877, the Katy Railroad built those tracks you just went past in the front yard.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And these were steam engines that were coming by, burning coal 15 to 20 times a day and night.
Oh boy.
So this place, the whole neighborhood very quickly became covered in soot, rumbling, noise, smells. A lot of those original home builders moved away and turned this neighborhood into a rental neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
And most of the folks who rented here worked for the railroad. It had its yard, as they called it, about 4 blocks to the west of us. And it did not pay most of the workers very well. So as a result, a lot of the folks in this neighborhood could not afford to rent entire homes themselves. They either had to be boarders in a boarding house like this white home behind us here. The 2-story home was a boarding house in the late 1800s.
Oh,
And the Eisenhowers, when they moved in here in 1889, David went to work for the railroad.
uh-huh.
And he wasn't paid very well either. So they actually rented out a room upstairs to another couple to make ends meet. That couple's name was Redmond. They're important to our story. When the Eisenhowers moved in 1889, they had a 3-year-old son and a 1-month-old son. And within the course of about a year and a half, Ida was going to have her 3rd son, which was Dwight. And she had him right in this front bedroom, or this left-hand bedroom right there, you'll see in a moment. When she went into labor on October 14th, there were no hospitals in Denison. So they asked Mr. Redden, who had just gotten off his shift at work, to go fetch the doctor. And the problem was, he didn't get back in a timely manner with the doctor. Not that there was any negligence, it's just he had trouble finding him. It was a storm. They traveled by carriage. It was a deal. So the neighborhood ladies had all gathered around to help, and they actually delivered young Dwight Eisenhower. One of those ladies, a lady named Jenny Jackson, lived on the other side of the railroad tracks. Now, the home she lived in is no longer there. There's a blue home in its place now. But she is the person who, 50 years after the Eisenhowers left, and they left about late 1891 or perhaps spring of 1892, 50 years later, she kept seeing this name Eisenhower associated with a general for World War II, and she thought, well, it's got to be the same Eisenhower family. How many Eisenhowers are there? So she started a correspondence with him, and then eventually with his mom, who was still alive in Kansas. And they confirmed that, yes, he was born here, and she decided this home needed to be preserved to honor him. Now, there's that's a good story. It's the truth, but it doesn't sound right to me. And I'm the only one that feels this way around here. But it doesn't sound right to me. He was a general when she started this whole process, but there were over 100 American generals at the time. D-Day, for which he became well known around the world, had not taken place yet. Certainly he had not become president yet.
Yeah.
He had gained notoriety for leading what was called Operation Torch in Northern Africa, but it seems a stretch to me that under normal circumstances you'd want to buy the home he was born in and turn it into a museum when there were only maybe 3 people in the whole town that remembered the family. So here's what I think is the rest of the story. It's my theory. You get a bonus. Miss Jackson, the lady putting it all together, she taught school in this town for over 50 years. She knew everybody. She had to know who lived in this home during the 1940s. It was an elderly woman. She was in her mid-80s with an adult son who had some sort of a disability. She died in either late 1941 or early 42. This man, who was now in his late 50s, was on his own and probably not fully capable of taking care of everything. I think she saw an opportunity to honor General Eisenhower, but at the same time do something that might be more important to the community to help this man. So So she started the process of convincing the people of Denison to contribute the money to buy the home. They raised about $3,000 and bought the home, which I think was a little bit more than the going price for homes of this type here. The gentleman, Mr. Mullen, ended up taking that money, moving about a half a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile from here to a smaller rent home. Lived another decade. I'm sure much more comfortable might not be the word, but much more securely than he otherwise would have, because she decided to preserve this home and create what would be the birthplace of a president as a museum. So that, as an old guy on the radio used to say, I think is the rest of the story.
Paul
Paul
Harvey.
Harvey.
Paul
Paul
Harvey. Well, we're going to let you go in now, and you
All
can film it all you want. It might be tough to get over this threshold here. Let's see.
Yeah,
Okay, well.
I might can get it.
Okay.
We'll manage somehow.
Yeah.
We do
Get
ask
up.
that you stay on the first floor.
Yeah, do it that way.
Yeah.
The stairs are not rickety, but they're very narrow and steep. So upstairs, all we have is a couple of rooms that we use for storage.
Use it to walk with.
There you go. And
Okay, so we're
there you go.
birthplace of President Eisenhower.
I'm going to actually set this out on the front porch, because I'm not sure that gives you enough room to get through there.
Okay.
Have you-
So this was the room he was born in?
That is the room I was born in. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, singer.
And I'm going to stay out on the back porch. When
Okay.
you're done, you can come back out there, and if you have any questions or anything else you want to reminisce about, we can, or I can leave you alone. Some people just want that.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Notice there was the room that he was born in.
Uh-huh.
Well, we got the set up old Singer sewing machine right there. Rocker. Now he said earlier, I believe, I remember him saying this was furnished by people in
People of
town. Yeah, several people in town later on. That this is not the authentic pieces of furniture. But it definitely looks like the era.
Interesting.
Interesting to see the older type furniture that might have been here in the day. There's the pattern of the wallpaper. And then the next room here is the kitchen. And a little high chair there. Dressed up for I come over and eat dinner. Have some tea.
Look at these stairs. Very narrow.
Yeah, the narrow staircase there that goes up. Said they just use it for storage, that it's kind of rickety and narrow, which, yes, the stairs are narrow. This is back out where we came in there. Okay. Now we're back. Come in here for in the dining room. There we go. The dining room area here, and it said they had rented this house from 1889 to 1889 to 1892. Furniture see today was not theirs. All the furniture was donated by the women of Denison after the city purchased the house in 1946 to commemorate Dwight D. Eisenhower. And, at the
Go in the kitchen now.
pattern and on the wallpaper patterns are cool. And come in here to the kitchen. And got the narrow staircase that he talked about. It was rickety and narrow. And the dining room table. The buffet and the china. Now we come back into the back room here. The old cook stove. The old kitchen. And it's interesting that they preserved this like this. But did not know, was knowing all the information from this Mr. Eisenhower from being President of the United States, and definitely did not know he was from Texas. And some old 1885 Butterick catalog. And go back out. We've got the front porch out here. Here's the, well, they say he was born. You see the wash basin over here. In the closet. Let's see.
They would have had an outhouse, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It should have.
Just outside the kitchen window there, that is an old ticket booth from the 50s, but that's where the outhouse was.
I was gonna say, because I was like, they wouldn't have had a bathroom. They would have had a White House. They would have had a outhouse.
Now, the family that was living here in the 40s, by then there was indoor plumbing.
Yeah.
They had added on a little addition off of the dining room area there. And when it was restored in the 50s, they just went ahead and tore that out.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because I was like, I looked at it and I thought, yeah, they had to have an outhouse.
Yeah.
Because back then, there wasn't that indoor plumbing.
Not at all.
And if you were not rich,
Absolutely.
they didn't get that until what, the 50s?
I don't know when they put it in Denison. I would think probably the late 20s, maybe.
Oh, okay.
They had electricity probably come through here about the same time. Now the farmers in the the county, a lot of them didn't get electricity until after World War II. So
Oh my gosh.
my father remember they got theirs about 1950. Yeah,
Wow.
So they had their little candles and all that they use. Oh, okay.
kerosene lamps and things like
The
that.
lanterns. Okay, okay. Because I was sitting there, I was like, there, I don't see a restroom. And I thought, I
Yeah, there
bet
was
they had to go out. Those are no fun to
Yeah.
use.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all.
Always worried about snakes maybe being in there. Or,
My mother talked about snakes and spiders when she was growing up.
And being in the cold weather, you go out there and try to do it real quick and get back in the house.
It's
Sure
too
think so,
cold.
yes, sir.
it's too cold. You're like, I got to go.
Yeah, this is interesting. just to see that this is preserved like it is. And
Now, when they
How
lived
they-
here, between the back of this house and that line of trees there were 3 more houses. That's how full the
Okay.
neighborhood was.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
Down the streets.
wow.
So that it was kind of like a company town with a railroad.
Were they
Well,
the industry built
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, yeah. The railroads, as far as I've been able to find out, did not own the homes. But,
Okay.
But they eventually did have their own hospital a few blocks from here and provided a lot of services.
They did some of the infrastructure probably.
Yeah, probably.
Ah, okay. Because I was wondering, I know the company towns, like where they had the coal miners, they owned everything.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't that much. And then there was a nationwide railroad strike. I want to say around 1920. I can't remember which side of World War I it was.
Yeah.
That the National Guard had to be called down here, and it was
Here in Texas.
in this town. The
Oh, my.
National Guard was stationed over where the big park is, about a half mile from here, and they had basically rioting and back warfare briefly between the
Wow.
railroad workers and the National Guard trying to keep the peace, and I think that ultimately led to the gradual decline of the power of the railroads in the town. But like you were saying earlier, there were several different railroad companies. Where that tree line is, now it's a ditch, a creek, if you want to call it that. But it's that sunken area actually at one time was a railroad line as well.
Wow, they didn't have the choice.
Right. The way that it worked was that this one that went in front of the house had, they called it above ground right of way. So when it got to streets, it went over the streets. If the streets were too big, they built bridges over the streets.
Hence the tunnels we just went through
Yep.
to drive
exactly.
to get here.
Exactly.
Now, where were the where all the train tracks in town came together and then dispersed after
That was
that?
at the rail yard about 4 blocks to the west of us here.
Is there a train station or is it gone?
It is now empty. It's just a big empty field that it's not used for anything. But there's the big overpass over it still. That there's been an overpass over that since the
But
1890s.
the structure's still there? The train station structure's still there? Oh, it's
I-
Now
not.
there is a depot downtown. It is not the depot that was here when the Eisenhowers were here, but it was built a few years after that. But it's just right at the end of Main Street downtown.
It sounds like it was huge here. We were in Palestine last weekend,
Yeah.
and that was a big railroad
Is that right?
city too. I mean, there was like, everywhere there was come railroads in there.
Yeah, they still have the train
Sure.
run for passengers.
That's neat.
Yeah.
But this one that ran over here, it's sunken. It had they call the underground right of way, so that if any of the if they met this one, that one went over the top, this one underneath.
Yeah.
When this one got to streets, they built tunnels under the streets for the trains, or built roads over them. So it was a complicated mess, and we still have trains that run just on the other side of the parking lot, heading that direction. What is that, southwest?
Yeah, southwest.
Burlington Northern. So, and the Union Pacific actually merged with the Katy about 40 years ago, give or take. So the Union Pacific actually owns this right of way still in front of the house.
Oh.
Still.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And their large rail yard is on the west end of town. It's still a pretty big active thing.
Well, I've gone into
Cool.
Burlington Northern's
Command Central or whatever
yeah,
they want to call it.
in Fort Worth because I was working on one of their machines, and that thing is huge. They had these big boards up showing where all the trains were, and the people were telling them,
yeah.
switch track, this, and I was like, that's freaking cool. You know,
it was, yeah.
just huge boards that they were.
What were you repairing?
I was repairing the communication between each other in the office, not out to the trains. But it was interesting. I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
So, just seeing the trains as they'd switch, and you'd see the train go down onto that part of the track. I was like, that's so cool.
Over by Angleton, between Angleton and Lake Jackson, we have a big rail yard there now. And it's all automated. It's so the trains drive themselves. It's all by computer or
Yeah.
remotely. And
I didn't know that,
Scares
but-
the heck out of me when you go through there. You think, that train's not going to see me.
Yeah, right.
Oh, because ain't nobody there.
Yeah.
That would scare me, because what if it had a malfunction?
Right.
Who's going to stop it?
Absolutely.
And you can't really stop a train.
No, you cannot.
Actually, no.
Well, thank y'all for coming by. I need to
Thank you
start
so much.
closing things down.
Thank you. I mean, that was awesome.
Yeah,
it was just
appreciate it.
another
We enjoyed it, and-
another piece of history that
That
needs
we
to
didn't
be
know about. We didn't know that he
known.
was from here. So, I mean, this is very interesting.